Hello and welcome to another brand new fabulous episode of This Is Metal with Joe Lawson. Now Joe, most people know I'm a huge Kiss fan. I didn't know that about you until you posted something on our page after I posted that we were going to be talking about Kiss tonight. I was talking about the 30th anniversary of their album Revenge, which 2022 marks. So why don't you share with us how big of a Kiss fan are you, and when did Kiss come on your radar?
Well, Kiss was one of the first bands that I was introduced into the world of rock and roll to. So, I got an older cousin, and he was into Kiss and Wasp and Motley Crue and bands like this. So that's kind of how my introduction to Kiss came about. So
by the time you're getting into Kiss, they've taken off the makeup and they're kind of into their kind of era of trying to be metal and, kind of the 80s Kiss, right?
Yeah, the 80s Kiss. But my cousin was into the older stuff.
Okay.
So when I was introduced to him, I didn't know any better. I was young.
Yeah.
So I was introduced to them, with the makeup. I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. This is wild. This is different. Wow. They look totally different.
And so,
it was kind of a cool experience, because you're young, you're innocent.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's a really neat time in your life,
See, a lot of people had that experience with Kiss, especially the younger you were when you were getting it. Because a lot of times, let's be honest, in the late '70s, Kiss was really huge, and if you're a little kid and you see Kiss, the first time I remember seeing maybe. Destroyer or Love Gun in a record store. Yeah, they actually had places where you used to be able to buy music, and not even knowing anything about Kiss, who they were, I was like, I don't know what the hell this is, but it looks so cool. I got to get that. Just the image. Kind of. And a lot of kids get into Kiss really young because they think, these guys look like superheroes, cartoon characters, and then so the image kind of got a lot of people in. And then when you start putting on the records and buying the music, it's like, okay, these guys don't just look cool, but they've got pretty good music.
Yeah, one thing that I think you can say that's kind of unique or amazing about Kiss is how many songs can you write about women and sexuality? And they've written album after album after album, which is cool. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm all for it, but it's a formula that's been successful for them over and over and over. So, but yeah, you mentioned the Revenge album. That's kind of jumping into the middle of their catalog there. But,
yeah.
That's my favorite Kiss album.
Yeah, see, it's kind of interesting because that is a lot of people's favorite Kiss album, especially, and it doesn't seem to really matter if you were a Kiss fan from way back in the beginning up until current day, if you just became a Kiss fan a couple of years ago, because that to me is like the last great Kiss album. It was a lineup with Bruce Kulick, of course. Eric Carr just died. They bring in Eric Singer on that album. It's his very first thing. Doing with the band, and so if you're Eric Singer, what a way to kind of get a job. You're getting some other guy's job because sadly he died.
Right, yeah. And that's pretty tough shoes to fill. That's not an easy situation. It's a good situation for somebody to fall into.
Yeah.
And in some respects, I guess you could look at it that way.
Yeah.
But it's also very difficult, very challenging because sometimes fans can be really fickle, and they're not too welcoming, after that. If their favorite drummer, their favorite guitarist, or whoever it was in the band that passed away, and you're replacing, that's a pretty tall order. We've kind of touched on that a little bit with the Ozzy thing, with Randy Rhoads passing away and Jakey Lee and other guitar players kind of trying to step into that gigantic void left there,
Yeah, and then talking about too Revenge, that was to many people kind of the album that kind of put Kiss back on the map. They had done all these different type of kind of poppy rock albums, trying to follow the trend, so to speak, I guess, in the 80s. trying to be that. And the thing is, they kind of went back to their roots on Revenge. The first thing they did was the song "God Gave Rock and Roll to You." Of course, that was, of course, on the Bill and Ted movie soundtrack. And it was their first time working with Bob Ezrin since 1981. And it had that classic kind of Destroyer era, Kiss sound. It's Gene and Paul kind of co-singing the song. They went back to writing songs together and singing songs together on the album. And that's something. It was kind of like a return to the heyday. And that's part of the reason people love that album so much.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of really unique moments, when you talk about a band like Kiss. There's so much to talk about, and there's so many points you can make and different things, but this is our spin on it, and just two guys talking as fans.
Well, just to kind of
how we came across it and our experience with it.
Just to kind of touch upon that and really kind of drive that point home. This guy that he's a publicist. His name was Michael Branville, and he is the one that started Kiss Online, the official website. He was Kiss's publicist back in the day, and he still works with Gene Simmons from time to time. But I bring him up because he's got a podcast called Three Sides of the Coin that he started with two friends of his, and they just recently and all they do is talk about like Kiss, their love for Kiss. Being Kiss fans, anything remotely Kiss related, and they've done like 500. They recently done like 502 episodes. So that's a podcast. They do nothing but talk about Kiss for 502 episodes. Wow, I mean, that takes some imagination. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can't imagine getting that depth and that far into it.
And of course, they're a band that's celebrating their 50th anniversary. So when you've been around for 50 years, and like we could never touch on all the songs. I mean, I as being a huge Kiss fan, I couldn't even tell you how many. What's the total songs in their catalog? But I know it's a good. It's quite a bit, and that's the thing right there. Like you're saying, to be able to write that many songs in a lifetime. I mean. And a lot of them are hits and stuff. I mean, these guys, part of the reason Kiss has lasted for 50 years is way beyond the makeup. I mean, that's a big part of it, and putting on the ultimate rock show. But they had the songs, man.
Oh yeah. They undeniably had songwriting talent, and we're really they were a unique band, and they just got better at it and learned how to hone it in, and did an amazing job on it. I just want to touch on some things from my experience.
Sure.
A minute. Some of the first stuff I did, this was like early 90s.
Okay.
I played in a cover band, and I did Heaven's on Fire.
Wow.
And a few years later, 94, I think it was, I played Parasite and Deuce in a band. And more recently, right before I put Scream King together, the drummer and guitar player that I put Scream King together with, we played around just having fun with covers, and we did a really heavy version of God of Thunder. So, it's cool. I've done some Kiss songs and had some fun playing their music too as well. And Revenge is my favorite album. And I think when you talk about a band like Kiss, you'll have people say, well, they're not really a metal band. They're a rock band.
I argue with that. Yeah.
And there's an argument for that too.
Yeah.
But then like we talked about, you listen to this album Revenge, and it's like, how can you say this is songs like Unholy, and how can you say that's not metal? It is.
Yeah, see, that's
absolutely is. And even like Parasite and Deuce.
Yeah.
I mean those definitely had a metal sound to what they were doing. Absolutely.
I mean, let's go back to some of the songs you touched on, like Deuce. That goes all the way back. I mean, I think that's the very first song in the very first Kiss album. I don't know if they were even calling it heavy metal back then, but I mean, that's definitely a metal song. You mentioned Parasite, okay? I mean, like Deuce. What is Deuce? I don't even really know, but they made a song out of it, just that word. Parasite is an interesting tale to tell, because that's a song. Well, I bet if I asked you who wrote the song, you probably think Gene Simmons, because he sings it. But actually, it was a Ace Frehley tune. He wrote the song, and the reason Gene sings it is back when they put out the first album, Ace Frehley wasn't. He was the one guy in the band that wasn't confident about his ability to sing lead. But all the other guys, even if you go back to the first Kiss record, they all were singing lead. Paul, Gene, and Peter. Peter Criss, the drummer. And typically, Ace would either give his songs that he wrote to Peter or Gene to sing. Another one of those tunes is, like, if you check out Strange Way, that's definitely a metal tune. Peter sings that one. That's on the second album, Hotter Than Hell. That's another great Ace tune. So, there's a lot of, going back to the very beginning of Kiss, they had some heavy tunes,
Right. Oh, definitely. So there's arguments for both, I would say,
Yeah.
They're undeniably one of the greatest rock bands in history, and whether you like them or not. And but they've definitely put some stuff out that I would say deserves to be called metal, for sure.
Oh, yeah. And then I think one thing that I credit Kiss with is they're so much more than a metal band. And what I mean by that is while they can do a song like, it's almost full-blown on metal, like Deuce, they can also do a beautiful power ballad like Beth, which is kind of the two polar opposites. And yet somehow Kiss is able to do it all.
Yeah. I mean, they've made a great living playing music and experimenting, and they've wrote most of their songs, but they've also had other people, and this is not a dig at them by any means, and it's not uncommon for a lot of professional bands to hire other songwriters, and other people contributed or wrote either silently or sold songs.
In fact, I'm talking about hit makers, hit songwriters. I'm sure, have you ever heard the name Desmond Child?
Yes.
Well, Kiss was the very first one that really started working with him. Going back to 1979 when they wrote that song, I Was Made for Loving You, on the Dynasty album. That was like a huge, that was Paul Stanley's attempt at like doing a disco song. And he knew this guy Desmond Child. And ever since then, they started writing these. He also wrote like Thrills in the Night and Heaven's on Fire, you mentioned. And some of those later hits. And then when it came time for Bon Jovi to do their hit breakout album Slippery When Wet, I guess Bon Jovi's opening for Kiss on the Animalize tour, and Bon Jovi asked Paul Stanley, "Hey, can you hook me up with that guy that you've been writing with, Paul?" Which was Desmond Child. And so if it was not for the Kiss connection, Slippery When Wet very much may have been another album, a different type of album. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff like that people, some people don't know about, but I mean it's out there. The information is. But their follow-up album, Carnival of Souls, was a pretty good album, and again, there's a couple of tracks on there that kind of, I kind of felt like could have also made the Revenge album. They were heavy, like Master and Slave and Hate, or even Jungle. It kind of had that tinge of heaviness to it as well.
Yeah, see, the problem with Carnival of Souls was it was originally supposed to come out right after Revenge, but then what happened was they did like an Unplugged album, and that came out. Then they did the Unplugged tour, and then I seen this one show in Burbank, California. This little tiny, they called it the Burbank Hilton or something like that, and little tiny convention hall. They did an Unplugged show, and it was actually Eric Singer's idea to invite Peter Criss down to bring his daughter, and that is where the seed for the reunion tour was planted. So they by that time they do this Unplugged tour. They have Peter come out. He sings a couple songs like Nothing to Lose and Hard Luck Woman with everybody in the band, including Bruce and Eric, and the fans just went wild. It was a cool thing to be there to kind of witness, and that's what planted the seed for the reunion. So eventually they put the makeup back on, the original lineups back together. They go on this huge reunion tour. At that point, Eric and Bruce are kind of sidelined. And the original idea was, well, we're just going to do this reunion tour for a few years, and then you guys can come back and we'll do this other album. But of course, the reunion was so huge that they it became like a thing for many, many years before Peter and Ace finally left again.
Yeah, I think people wanted to believe in that so badly, so desperately, and I'm talking to fans and people financially involved with the band, and they pushed this on Gene and Paul, I think.
Yeah.
And it kind of didn't really go over as good as that it maybe could have if circumstances were different. But Peter is who he is, and Ace is who he is, and they weren't able to successfully pull this off, kind of in a long-term thing.
And see, get back to
it was difficult for them. It was difficult for those guys to function. Even just writing and recording was a major deal. Getting through a record with these guys, and with Psycho Circus, actually, Peter Criss only ended up playing drums on one of them songs.
Yeah. And here's the thing with that. Getting back to Carnival Souls for a minute, because what ended up happening with that album, so they do the reunion tour, and an album that's supposed to originally come out like in 1995 or something like that. It doesn't come out for another 2 years till like 97, and then they don't even do a proper tour behind it. The record company didn't really push it like they should have. They ended up calling it the final session because that's the final album with Eric Singer and Bruce, and even if you look at the kind of it's like a shot from the recording studio where they recorded it. They didn't really go all out to promote the album, so it kind of got just kind of put out there, and for many years it was heavily bootlegged, and so I guess the record company finally decided, well, this thing's been so bootlegged that we better put out like an official version,
Right. Now I don't know, I'm sure if you ask each individual person in KISS, they would give you their side of the story and their reasons behind this. But according to Peter Criss, in his book, Make Up to Break Up, My Life In and Out of KISS, Paul Stanley was so determined not to work with him and Ace Frehley in the studio that they were each paid $850,000 to not participate in the recording.
Yeah,
that's really something.
Yeah, well, I think, again, you kind of.
I wish somebody would pay me $850,000 to not record.
Yeah, you gotta look at the fact that history's kind of repeated itself here. That the same two guys didn't end up lasting in the band, and I think for a lot of the same reasons. I've heard Gene and Paul talk about the fact. Okay, first of all, they're the two members that have been in the band since day one. They've been, they wrote most of the songs, they sing most of the songs. They've been there for the whole 50 years. And then Peter and Ace come back, and they want to get paid as much as Gene and Paul get paid. They want an equal share of everything. They want an equal say in everything. And I could understand Gene and Paul from a business standpoint. Well, hey, we've been here since day one. Why should you get as much as us? Just on the surface of that. And then apparently too, Peter was drinking and doing drugging or whatever again, and Ace was getting drunk before he finally sobered up. So people that are kind of have those addictions, you're not playing with a full deck, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, in the long run, they weren't able to make that happen, and it would have been nice, I think, to see more albums in the 90s with Eric and Bruce, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But, money talks, and I think it talked a lot to Gene and Paul, and that they were kind of persuaded into doing this. And I don't think either one of them wanted to revisit this.
Yeah.
That they, they split up with those guys and Kiss for a reason, and that they really didn't want to go back and do this. Yeah. But like I said, again, money talks and business goes a different way sometimes. You don't always get to choose your path completely, I guess. But,
and again,
these guys have been doing it for so long. I think that maybe in their hearts they wanted it to work too, and figured, let's give it one last shot. Maybe there was some legitimacy to that. I think so. Yeah. But I think honestly that they knew that probably would be short-lived and be a very difficult road going into it.
And see, in all fairness, to Gene and Paul, I mean, everybody's got their side of the story. I get that, but I tend to believe Paul and Gene's side. I mean, because even you look at like about a year ago, there was this A&E like 3-night documentary of Kiss, because again, celebrating 50 years, and how can you get a band that's been around for, how can you do it in just one night? And at that point, Ace and Peter out of the band, that they wanted to very much include them in this documentary, but Peter was like, well, you better not put Beth in there, otherwise I'm gonna sue you guys, and I'm sure they could get around that. And then Peter and Ace were like, well, if we're not gonna get paid for taking part in a documentary, then we don't want to be part of it. And so that's why they weren't included in that documentary. And they used old clips of Peter and Ace, but they were like old interviews. So Gene and Paul were kind of telling the story for the whole 50 years, during that 3-night documentary, and they're using old clips of Peter and Ace, because they're like, well, we better get paid for this. And so again, I think kind of poor judgment on their, and they wanted to have equal say as Gene and Paul as far as what went in the documentary. And again, these are two former members, they're no longer in the band, and they think they should have just as much say, the guys that are in the band. I don't know if I totally agree with that.
I mean, there's a lot to consider. Like I said, that some things we might not ever really know the truth on all of the business side of things. But Paul Stanley made a comment about the reunion tour. He said the reunion tour made us the number one band again. We played to about 2 million people in 1 year. Then we did the Psycho Circus tour, and after that we thought, been there, done it. Mm-hmm. We're the champs again. Let's retire on top. And we felt there's nothing worse than having someone go away and you don't get to say goodbye. So this tour really is for the fans and to celebrate the whole history of the band.
Yeah, and again, talking about Paul Stanley, being the ultimate frontman and doing those high jumps. A couple years ago, I know he had like hip replacement surgery. Both Gene and Paul, I think they're in their early 70s, and so talking about this being kind of the 50th anniversary of the band, I think they're going to do a few more shows, and they've been calling this the end of a road tour. It was supposed to kind of be the final farewell before COVID hit and everything, so they're getting back to kind of doing that and wrapping it up. But I guess that's really a good time to kind of wrap it up, 50 years into the band's history, and you can say, okay, we've been here for 50 years, I guess we don't want to be like the Rolling Stones, get up there in our wheelchairs and that, when we're 80 years old. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to see those guys, carry on their legacy and stuff like that. And I have my own suspicions or my own beliefs on the legitimacy of their live performances now. Okay. And this is gonna be an unpleasant part of the conversation, but it's an honest part. Yeah. And I told a friend of mine this recently too. And this was just a few years ago. Yeah. And I mentioned the same thing. These guys are in their 70s. Yeah, yeah. Cut them some slack. I mean. When you see this band running around, okay, they all got makeup, so they can hide their faces. They could have anybody play their roles that were good, as long as they were good enough and talented enough to pull it off. Mm-hmm. They could do this and still continue continue on with Kiss. How do you know that they're not doing that? And then some of the videos of recent performances, I pointed it out. Do you really believe that Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons and some of these guys running around without their shirts don't have one fucking gray hair on their chest in their 70s?
Yeah.
Does that seem real? Does that seem legit?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
I get you.
You know, so I mean, and why would they not do that? Mm-hmm. I'm not dissing them for doing that. If you had a multi-million-dollar empire and you were able to continue this thing on and just put other people in place, and you controlled it, and you still had say-so over everything, and they probably still go in and actually write songs and record and stuff like that themselves, you know. And they might even have people coming into the studio helping out with that sometimes.
Who knows?
But at least they're still out there in some format, and at least they're still going forward, you know. And there's a lot to be said for that too. So I don't diss them for that, but it is what it is, and and to the diehard Kiss fan, you just don't like Kiss, you know, and they wouldn't do that, and it's like, you know, some people are just blind to reality, like I said, you know.
Yeah, I dare say, I dare say, so what, and what I mean by that is, I kind of agree with what you say, Joe, about, you know, these guys are in their 70s, and okay, you mentioned the makeup. Okay, first of all, you know what it's like to be a performer up on stage, especially a front man. Okay, just imagine, okay, not only if you had that makeup on, you had to have on your face for 2 hours running around on stage, okay? I mean, these guys have perfected putting on that makeup after 50 years, but okay, so that's kind of layer one. And then you've got the physical aspect of the live performance, and a band like Kiss is on stage at least for a good 2.5 hours, you know, with the set list they have, running around. Okay, on top of the makeup and the live performance part, they got. I mean, just imagine the costumes, the armor, the boots, you know, strapping on a guitar, and then maybe changing a guitar, you know, for a different song or whatever. You got all that, you know. Could you imagine coming off stage, you know, having all that to deal with, and doing it night after night?
It's a major production, and I mean, I don't know that people realize how much probably actually did go into that.
I mean, I'm just talking about the physicality. Could you imagine how exhausted you would? I mean, you come off stage, and then before you can even, you know, go home back home for a night or a hotel or whatever, got to take off the makeup, got to get out of your costume, got to load it all up on you know, those big trucks and stuff. I mean, it's a process.
Yeah, I mean, it was a major process, and it still is. And, you know, it's a testament to the band how big they are, that they have this entire production crew. And it's almost like their own city, you know, of people, you know, involved that do different jobs and stuff like that to make all of this, to make the wheels go round.
Yeah.
In 2011, they began recording a new album back then called Sonic Boom. One of the things I did like about that record was that it was just straight rock songs. It wasn't a bunch of overproduced ballads and keyboards. It was just a good straight up rock album, and they used analog equipment instead of digital stuff. And Gene made a pretty good comment about that. Technology is a seductive bitch.
Yeah.
She will seduce you. You press this button, you don't have to do anything. But analog is the love of your life. You can push real hard and it always gives back.
Oh, wow.
For the new album, the actual recording process was 24-track tape and an old Trident board.
Yeah.
And as many tubes as possible. You need tubes, electricity, and thick wood to make that thick sound. And he's right. I mean, you know, digital's come a long ways over the years and stuff like that. But that's how they got some of those huge, massive sounding albums that even today, like Holy Diver. I mean, you put that album on today even, and it's like, man, the production on this is really good. When was this made? What,
1982. And you know, Joe, like by the time we get done with this episode, like you said, there's so much about Kiss we could talk about. We've just really scratched the surface. But, you know, going back to the very beginning of the band, I mean, especially Gene and Paul, you got to look at the, you know, it was so much more than just a band, so much more than just music. I mean, I remember reading where in one of their early photo shoots, like Gene was kind of, he was sticking his tongue out. This is how the tongue thing got started. Sticking out his tongue at the photographer, making all kinds of funny faces, and Paul Stanley's kind of like getting irritated. Like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I want the photographer to kind of notice me, and that's how he became the tongue guy. So it's just amazing, and apparently back when the band was first starting, Gene Simmons was a lot more I guess comfortable in being like in front of the camera and that, and Paul was kind of getting used to the idea, and so even when they came up with the idea, the manager Bill Coyne back then, he said, okay, who's going to breathe fire? Gene Simmons was the one that raised his hand, and so again, kind of wanting to be front and center. That's how he's like, well, nobody else raised their hand, so I guess we'll have, okay, Gene, you're going to learn how to do this. And they actually went to a musician, a magician, does magic tricks, to learn how to do that. And so it was not just a matter of, okay, we're going to do this cool thing and Gene's going to breathe the fire. They actually, he went to somebody to learn how to do it the proper way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Love it.
And then just little things like that. And then, what do you think about the whole branding? I don't know that I ever would have thought of, even when you put the makeup on for the first time, to come up with the idea, you know what? Of course, the way they got the idea for the makeup was they all went to see an Alice Cooper concert, and they thought, okay, what Alice Cooper is doing is really cool, but they've only got one guy that kind of gets made up. What if we took that to the extreme and all 4 guys in the band got made up? We'll all create our own design. Okay, so that's kind of taken to the extreme right there. But then to come up with the idea, you know what? We're gonna copyright each one of these makeup designs, and that's why they're kind of able to, get away with Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer putting on the cat makeup and the space makeup, because they own those rights. And I kind of agree with what Gene and Paul said over the years that, and if you think about this, it's kind of true. Kiss has become so big over the last 50 years that those makeup designs, those characters, if you will, the cat, the spaceman, the demon, the starman, the Star Child, they're almost as iconic as the guys that played them.
Yes, it was genius marketing, is what I think.
Yeah.
And not only that, they kind of paved the way. A lot of bands kind of followed in that formula. Slipknot and different modern bands, they kind of do the same thing. They have their own characters, their own makeup or their own mask or whatever. But it was Kiss who first did that. Yeah.
I don't think anybody before Kiss ever thought to even, hey, we're going to copyright this stuff, and, if anybody tries to use it, that's what, I think you and I talked about this. Another thing was, I think around 1985 or 86, Kiss was no longer wearing their makeup at that time, but that's around the time King Diamond went solo, and he was starting to become really popular among the metal crowd, and Gene Simmons successfully sued King Diamond because he felt that his makeup design he was using looked too much like his. Now, I will say this. I remember at the time, like reading in like Metal Edge magazines and Hit Parade, or seeing all this coverage of King Diamond at the time, and because I'm a Kiss fan, I did kind of think, Gene Simmons, he's doing something on his own, or what's this? And so he successfully sued King Diamond. King Diamond had to kind of alter his makeup, but again, that's just kind of another side story in the history of Kiss.
Yeah, and they did. They copyrighted and they trademarked everything they did. They're genius businessmen. They are, and they helped a lot of other bands and helped launch their careers in numerous different ways. So I say that kudos to them for doing that. One thing that we haven't talked about that we should touch on a little bit is Vinnie Vincent.
Oh, sure.
His part in working with the band, with Kiss. So Vinnie Vincent, Gene Simmons stated in an interview, Vinnie, for the record, was fired for unethical behavior, not because of lack of talent.
Yeah.
So that was the official word from Gene Simmons of why they parted ways with Vinnie Vincent. But what did you think of that whole era, that whole time of Vinnie Vincent working with Kiss?
Well, Vinnie Vincent, he kind of he physically plays guitar in 2 albums, Creatures of the Night and Lick It Up. Lick It Up, he's all over as a writer. On Creatures of the Night, which was a previous album where Ace had just left, Ace doesn't play a lick on that album. They had Vinnie Vincent on a couple tracks. He wrote some of the music for Creatures of the Night. They had other guitar players kind of come in. It was almost like an auditioning process. They had guitar player Steve Ferris from Mr. Mister. He played on a couple of the tracks. And Vinny ultimately ended up getting the gig from he was a co-writer of he wrote the song I Love It Loud with Gene Simmons. That was the big single off of that album. And actually, Vinnie Vincent got introduced to Kiss through this other guy they were writing with named Adam Mitchell. And then apparently they'd been told by Carmine Appice, this to Gene and Paul were that, hey, this guy's very talented, but you're going to regret working with him. And apparently everybody that's ever worked with Vinnie Vincent has had kind of a similar falling out or story. And I mean, just to kind of really take that home, so Vinnie Vincent's kicked out of Kiss. He does 2 solo albums, and then even his relationship with the record company Chrysalis, they dropped him and they gave his record a deal to Mark Slaughter and Dana Strum, because of course that's where Slaughter came from, the ashes of the Vinnie Vincent invasion, So
right.
And when they were promoting,
so let me ask you this real quick, just to interrupt. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Have you ever interviewed Vinnie Vincent?
No, and see the thing with Vinnie is not that I wouldn't love to, but he's very hard to get a hold of. I mean, he doesn't really have a presence. He doesn't have an official Facebook page or anything. He's got these people. I think a big part of Vinnie Vincent's problem is apparently a rumor is he's got the a manager and these people that work behind the scenes with him kind of really give him, I guess, bad advice. I mean, okay, Vinnie Vincent has a right to make money however he wants, but I do not think it's the wisest way. I mean, for example, I think Vinnie Vincent started trying to make a comeback about 2016. His first appearance in anywhere in over 20 years was at this Atlanta Kiss Expo, and people came and they wanted to see him, and he got all kinds of great response. A guy that's been kind of in hiding, hasn't done nothing for 20 years. Okay, makes sense. And then he starts after that, promising to make these other appearances, and time again he pulls these no-shows, cancels the events, and then he does have an official website, but for example, he's selling these autographed guitars on his official website for thousands of dollars because they've got his autograph. He's these solo CDs that came out over 30 years ago. You can buy buy the same CDs on Amazon for $15 or less, and he's selling CDs from over 30 years ago, Joe, to his fans for $150, $200 because it's got his autograph. Come on.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, at least put out a new album. I mean, and supposedly he's been working on one. I mean, he put out this big Neil Davis, who's this guy that puts on these great Kiss expos. He was supposedly doing this stuff with Vinny, and Vinny told me he's working on a new album. And they put out this thing about, the new album's great. We played it for some fans, and they just love it. But then, it's not like an official press release. And then you hear nothing. So, I mean, again, the guy's got talent, but he does nothing with it. I mean, he's selling albums that are 30 years old. I mean, if you're gonna sell for $200, let's at least get a nice spot. We need more than just a Vinnie Vincent autograph. Maybe add some make it a nice box set. Add some unreleased music. Since you've been away for over 20 years. Make it worth the fans.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Steering it back a little bit towards Kiss, though.
Yeah.
I did not know this. Vinnie Vincent was a co-writer on the Revenge album, contributing to the songs Unholy, Tough Love, Heart of Chrome, and I Just Wanna. Yeah. Some of their most popular, best songs on that album.
Yeah.
So apparently he had some skills as a songwriter then.
See, here's this, yeah, definitely.
They ended up working with him again.
Well, definitely, Joe, and here's the story on that. And again, very sad, that would have, I guess Vinnie Vincent's idea then was like maybe, hey, this is my way back into Kiss. Who knows? But also we got to put it in the story here. Several years later, Vinnie Vincent tried to sue Gene and Paul over being fired from Kiss, and he had a bad contract, and then Gene Simmons. The way that happened on the Revenge is Gene Simmons, while they were getting ready to record the Revenge album, they were in the studio in Los Angeles at the time. He runs into Vinnie Vincent, and they kind of talk, and hi, how are you doing, and this and that, and Gene said he seemed nice, and he seemed like he changed, so they wrote those 4 songs with him. But then as soon as they got in the studio, he was making like demands that he wanted a huge chunk of a royalty, songwriting fees or whatever, and so they used his songs, but then once again they thought, okay, this guy's up to his old tricks again. We like threw him another lifeline, and he's still, and then he goes and tries to sue us. So again, I don't know about that guy, but and then another thing is, again, getting back to the branding of Kiss. Another thing that kind of spawned as a result of Kiss. The early 2000s. Did you ever watch that TV show Gene Simmons' Family Jewels?
Oh, of course, yeah. Yeah, it was quite entertaining, yes.
Now, it did come after the Osbournes, but, I just love seeing Gene interact with his family. You get to see a side of him that you don't typically get to see. And I think the great part about the TV show is, even though it's a reality show, I do think a lot of it was kind of honest. I mean, in the sense that I have no doubt that he loves his wife and his kids and this and that, and even if it wasn't for that show, he might not have ever married Shannon.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. All great points, and but what an amazing band and an amazing experience. I don't think that there's too many people that they're into rock and metal.
Yeah.
Whether you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s,
yeah.
70s even. Everybody knows who Kiss is.
Yeah.
They've left their mark in about as big of a way as you possibly can, I would think.
Yeah.
And I would definitely say that they've put out enough songs and enough material that would classify them as a contender for being called a metal band.
Yeah.
So the argument of rock versus metal, or however you want to do it, people say the same thing with Judas Priest.
Yeah.
Even in a recent award ceremony, I heard Rob Halford refer to them as a rock band.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah.
It kind of there's a line there, but I think sometimes bands like Kiss and bands like Judas Priest kind of blur or forge those two worlds together.
Oh yeah.
Yes, they're a rock band, but they're also a metal band when they want to be too.
Sure.
They have that side to them.
See, Kiss is one of those bands that's really unique because they are kind of everything. Another band I would kind of equivalent that to is like Queen. People will tell you like Queen's a pop band, Queen's a rock band. Okay, you look at something like, I don't know if you've ever heard the song Killer Queen. That's almost kind of like a vaudeville, and then you got something like a big rock tune like Bohemian Rhapsody. You got Somebody to Love, and then you got take a song like Another One Bites the Dust. Okay, that's a total disco song.
Don't forget Dragon Attack.
Yeah, we are the champions, and I think Dragon Attack's a good one. And then I think besides that, probably the most metal Queen ever got was, if you heard the song Stone Cold Crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another band that could kind of do it all. And then to kind of wrap up tonight's episode, just kind of Kiss was inducted, I think it was 2014, into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I got I got a lot to say about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, okay, Kiss is in finally, but what I did not like is that they got all these crazy rules like okay, well they were only going to only induct the original 4. That's the rule, and they weren't going to include Bruce. Okay, oh well, he was only in the band for 12 years. They didn't induct Eric Carr, who of course sadly died a number of years ago of cancer when he was only 45 years old. And the thing with that too is, I don't know if you remember when Eric Carr died. He happened to have died on November 24th. Coming up this year is the 31th anniversary of his death, and he happened to have died on the same day as Freddie Mercury. So, like, interestingly enough, Rolling Stone.
Wow, how about that? No kidding. Huh?
Rolling Stone did not even mention Eric Carr's death at the time, and Bruce Kulick and Gene and Paul, they wrote kind of an FU letter to Rolling Stone for not even mentioning their bandmate's death. And so again, I give those guys credit for that, and part of the reason that Kiss did not perform at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is and get up there with Ace and Peter. Gene and Paul were like, okay, there's 9 members of Kiss. If you're not going to include everybody that's ever been in the band, we're not going to get up there and perform. And I got to give those guys credits for kind of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
that's interesting.
Yeah, and again, and then you kind of find out the Rolling Stone does have something to do with for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And my main complaint with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is I think they need to get their rules kind of in order because, again, this year when Judas Priest was inducted,
no Tim Owens.
Yeah, no Tim Owens and no Richie Faulkner, and Judas Priest.
But Richie Faulkner came out to receive the reward. To support his bandmates, even though he wasn't inducted, and I think that shows what a class act, what a team player, what an awesome statement from him, and kudos to him, and he earned a lot of respect from me when I found that out.
I totally agree, but in closing, they put out, the Judas Priest manager put out a press release, and apparently what they were told from a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is. The reason Tim Owens and Richie Faulkner could not be included is because they were not in the band for over 25 years and they did not play on any iconic albums. Now, this is what I'm saying. So, like, if you go look at Metallica's induction, everybody that was ever in the band was inducted. And you can't tell. Okay, Jason Newsted, he definitely deserves to be inducted because I think a big part of Metallica's career, was with him. So, no doubt he deserves to be there. But my thing is, so there are other members of Metallica that were not in the band for 25 years, but yet they were allowed to be inducted. They did not play on it. So you see what I'm saying? They have all these crazy rules, but they apply them where they want them to apply, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but it's a fickle thing, and organizations like that, I despise. Yeah. So I don't put too much into them. Like I said, I thought it was a very class act and very cool for Richie Faulkner to go out there and support his bandmates the way that he did. That was, even though he wasn't inducted, that was pretty awesome.
I mean, let me ask you.
That's more important than the award to me.
And let me ask you, Joe, as a Judas Priest fan and watching all that. What did you see any of the video clips of Rob Halford getting up there and he was the only one. They did like an all-star jam and Rob Halford got up with Dolly Parton and sang some songs. I thought, how cool is that?
That was very cool. Yeah.
Well,
very cool.
Well, Joe Lawson, I can't believe it. It's almost been an hour since that we've been doing this, just under an hour. But as always, it's been a blast. And next time we get together, we're going to be doing a special show paying tribute to Nazareth and talking about obviously their singer Dan McCaffrey. He recently passed away about a week ago, so we're going to get into a nice long discussion about Nazareth because they're one of those I dare say legendary bands, but I say legendary because they've been around for so long and they got so many great albums. But I think sadly, like so many people, so many great bands from their time kind of been forgotten. And I'm kind of guilty of this myself because if you asked me to name a Nazareth song, okay, Love Hurts, Hair of a Dog, but I know there's so much more to Nazareth than just that,
Oh yeah, Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I hope we kind of expose on the next show. So I'm going to be doing my homework, and I know you will. So have a good rest of the week, Joe, and I'll be talking to you next week.
Sounds good, my friend. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye, Joe.
Chaotic Riffs Magazine.